The diner fell silent the moment the slap echoed across the tiled floor. Forks froze mid-air, conversations died, and every eye turned toward the corner booth where a girl with trembling hands clutched her cheek. The laughter of 3 teenage boys shattered the quiet like glass. Outside, sunlight spilled lazily over the dusty parking lot, but inside the air turned cold. Her wheelchair squeaked slightly as she tried to move back, her eyes wide and wet, her lips forming words she couldn't seem to say. Her name was Clara Wynne, and for the past 3 years she'd learned to live with whispers, stares, and the cruel edge of pity. But today, cruelty came with an open hand. If you believe kindness can still change the world, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every story we tell reminds the world that compassion still matters, that second chances still exist, and that even broken hearts can make a difference. Clara had been born with cerebral palsy. It made walking difficult, sometimes impossible. But what hurt her more wasn't her condition. It was the way people treated her because of it. She loved coming to Millie's Diner, a small, old-fashioned place that smelled of buttered toast and coffee, where she could watch life go by from the window seat. Every morning, she'd wheel herself there with her sketchbook on her lap and draw faces. Faces of people who smiled, who lived, who loved. It helped her feel like she belonged, even if the world often said otherwise. That morning had started like any other. The sun was warm, the scent of bacon filled the air, and Clara's gentle smile mirrored the quiet peace of the small town. But when 3 local boys walked in, boys from the nearby high school, loud and restless, everything shifted. They spotted her right away. "Look, it's Wheels again," one of them muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. The waitress shot them a warning look, but said nothing. They were regulars, sons of rich men, always pushing boundaries. Clara tried to ignore them, focusing on her drawing of a bird perched on a branch. But they didn't let her. They began to mock the way she moved, the way she held her pencil. One of them grabbed her sketchbook, flipping through her drawings with cruel laughter. "Wow, she even draws like she walks," crooked, another jeered. The third boy, emboldened by his friend's laughter, leaned closer, his tone turning venomous. "You think people like you belong here? You should just stay home." Clara reached for her sketchbook, whispering, "Please, just give it back." But that whisper only made them laugh harder. Then, in a moment that made even his friends hesitate, the boy raised his hand and slapped her across the face. The sound was sharp and shocking. The diner froze. The waitress gasped, dropping a plate. Clara's glasses fell to the floor and shattered. Her hand trembled as she touched her burning cheek, not from pain, but from disbelief. She had spent her whole life trying to believe people were better than this, and in one cruel instant that belief crumbled. The boys laughed awkwardly, pretending it was nothing. The waitress tried to intervene, but they shoved a few bills on the counter, muttering something about "just a joke," and walked out as if they'd done nothing wrong. Clara sat there in silence, tears slipping down her cheek, surrounded by people too afraid or too unsure to help. Outside, the sound of engines echoed faintly in the distance. Clara left her breakfast untouched. She picked up her broken glasses and folded them carefully, like something sacred, before setting them beside her sketchbook. The waitress, a kind older woman named Ruth, knelt beside her, whispering apologies, but Clara only shook her head. "It's not your fault," she said softly. "People just don't see me." Then she wheeled herself toward the door and out into the blinding daylight, her face turned away so no one would see her cry. An hour passed. The diner went back to its slow rhythm, though something in the air felt heavier now, as if guilt hung over every booth. The cook, an ex-soldier named Tom, kept muttering under his breath about those punks needing a lesson, but he didn't leave the kitchen. Ruth kept wiping the same table over and over, lost in thought. And then, right around noon, the rumble began. It started low, like thunder rolling in the distance. Then it grew louder, closer. The windows trembled. Coffee cups rattled. Outside, 6 motorcycles roared into the parking lot, their chrome flashing in the midday sun. The engines died one by one, leaving behind a silence that was somehow louder than the noise. Heads turned as the bikers walked in, leather jackets, steel boots, sunburned faces. They looked rough, intimidating, like trouble itself had arrived on 2 wheels. But Ruth recognized one of them instantly. At the front was Harper Cole, a man in his early 40s, with a graying beard and eyes that had seen too much. He wasn't just any biker, he was Clara's uncle, though few people in town knew that. Harper had spent years traveling with his club, the Iron Shepherds, men who believed in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. He hadn't seen Clara in months, but he'd heard what happened. The moment Ruth called him in tears, he turned his bike around and headed straight for Millie's diner. When the group walked in, the air shifted again. The same booth where Clara had been sitting an hour earlier still bore a faint mark from where her glasses had fallen. Harper looked at it quietly, his jaw tightening. "They hurt her here?" he asked, his voice low. Ruth nodded. The cook pointed to the door, mumbling, "3 boys, local kids, still hanging out at the gas station down the road." Harper didn't say another word. He just nodded to his crew. The bikers left as suddenly as they came. For 10 long minutes the diner was quiet again. Then from across the street voices rose shouting. "The kind that made you hold your breath." The boys were there, still laughing, still full of bravado, until 6 bikers surrounded them like shadows. Harper stepped forward, pulling out something small, Clara's sketchbook. Ruth had given it to him before he left. He held it out. "You broke something that didn't belong to you," he said quietly. "Now you're going to fix it." The boys sneered, but one look at the hardened faces around them wiped the smirks away. Harper didn't touch them, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he opened the sketchbook to a drawing Clara had done. A drawing of a bird trying to fly despite its broken wing. "This is what strength looks like," he said. "You think being cruel makes you powerful? Try being kind when no one deserves it. That's power." By the time Harper and his crew returned to the diner, the boys were gone, heads low, faces pale. Harper sat down at Clara's booth, placing her sketchbook carefully on the table. "She's at home?" he asked. Ruth nodded again, wiping her eyes. "She said she didn't want to come back here for a while." Harper sighed, staring out the window. "She will. And when she does, she'll know this place still has good people in it." The next morning, the entire town seemed to know what had happened. Not the violence, the lesson. The boys, ashamed and shaken, showed up at Clara's house. Harper watched from his bike as they stood on her porch, holding something awkwardly wrapped in paper. When Clara opened the door, they didn't speak at first. The tallest one finally stepped forward, eyes wet with regret.
"We're sorry,"
he said quietly. "We were stupid. We didn't see you for who you are." Then he handed her the package. Inside was a brand new sketchbook, and on the first page, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "To the strongest person we've ever met." The Clara didn't know what to say. She looked from their faces to the gift and back again. Then, for the first time in a long time, she smiled. It wasn't forgiveness yet, not completely, but it was a beginning. Weeks later, Clara returned to Millie's diner. The regulars clapped softly as she wheeled in, her new sketchbook resting on her lap. Ruth hugged her tightly. The bikers were there too, sitting quietly at the counter. Harper raised his coffee cup in greeting. "Good to see you back, kid," he said with a proud smile. Clara's eyes sparkled as she replied, "Good to be back." She glanced around, noticing something new on the wall. One of her drawings, framed and hung above the counter. It was the bird with the broken wing, now surrounded by rays of sunlight. Underneath it, someone had written a simple message. "Strength isn't in the legs that walk, but in the heart that rises." That afternoon, laughter returned to the diner, not cruel or mocking, but warm and genuine. And for the first time in a long while, Clara felt truly seen. Not as a disabled girl, not as a victim, but as someone who inspired others to be better. Harper watched her from across the room, pride swelling in his chest. Sometimes, justice doesn't need fists. It just needs courage and compassion. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every story we tell is a reminder that kindness can rewrite even the cruelest chapters. Special request. Comment below. I believe in kindness and courage. Let's fill the world with hope, one story at a time.